Hello everyone and welcome. I'm excited to kick off today's presentation with our topic, monogamy. This is the first slide, so I just want to briefly introduce what we'll be exploring. We'll look into what monogamy means, why it matters, and some interesting insights around it. I promise to keep it engaging and informative. So let's get started. Monogamous marriage has become widespread across Europe and more recently around the world. Despite this, we've also seen increasing disparities in wealth, which might seem unrelated at first glance. What's fascinating here is the hypothesis that the core values and structures built into monogamous marriage have actually contributed to societal development. These foundations, we believe, have been sustained because they offer cumulative benefits over time. Interestingly, one way to think about this is through the lens of beekeeping, an analogy that helps illustrate how societal progress can build upon itself. In this slide, we're exploring how these marriage norms might have played a role in fostering long-term social and economic advancements, and how that's connected to the broader theme of societal evolution. Regulating monogamy can have a significant impact on reducing various types of crime, including assault, murder, theft, and even misrepresentation. When monogamy is structured or encouraged, it helps to limit intrasexual competition, which is often a driving force behind many of these aggressive behaviors. By doing so, we also shrink the pool of unmarried men, which tends to decrease the pressure and competition for mates. This regulation also helps to address issues like the spousal age gap, making relationships more balanced and reducing ripeness gaps, meaning less competition for younger females, and correcting sex imbalances in the population. Essentially, it creates a more stable environment where the competition for mates is less intense. Furthermore, regularizing monogamy leads to the creation of reserve funds and encourages more thoughtful investment in children and family stability. It shifts male efforts away from constantly seeking new mates toward more meaningful fatherly ventures, which benefits everyone in the long run. Lastly, increasing relatedness within families through regulated monogamy can significantly lower intrafamily conflicts. This results in fewer cases of child neglect, abuse, accidental deaths, and even homicide. Overall, these changes foster a safer, more stable society by reducing sources of conflict and encouraging stronger familial bonds. This aligns perfectly with our overall theme of promoting social stability and well-being through structured relationships. When we look at mating approaches and marriage frameworks, what's interesting is that they are often indistinguishable from each other. People, unlike other species, don't just rely on instinct. We heavily depend on social learning. This means we learn skills, behaviors, and social norms through observing and interacting with others. Because of this, the principles by which we judge others, what's acceptable, what's admirable, are shaped by the social environment we grow up in. When someone advances socially or gains acceptance, it's often linked to how well they conform to these accepted norms. Now, in terms of marriage frameworks, these are part of that same social learning process. They're more than just personal choices, they're embedded in the societal norms that guide us. So, understanding these frameworks helps us see how deeply interconnected our mating strategies are with our social and cultural context, which ultimately influences our broader social behaviors and perceptions. Let's take a closer look at how different societal frameworks influence family structures and paternity practices. In some contexts, like those promoted by the NA in China, there are strict standards that actually limit long-term pair holding and don't necessarily rely on traditional marriage or paternal investments. Instead, these frameworks operate independently of those institutions. Conversely, in some South American societies, the standards are more permissive, allowing for the spread of apparent paternity and increased paternal uncertainty. What's interesting here is that these alternative frameworks can actually mitigate the restrictive effects of certain marriage systems. They introduce a different set of social norms that can loosen the traditional expectations around marriage and paternity. So, when we compare these contexts, we see how the presence of elective frameworks, like those pushed by the NA, can influence the overall social environment. They essentially offer a different way of structuring familial bonds and paternity, which can, in some cases, ease the constraints imposed by conventional marriage systems. This ties back to our broader theme of understanding how societal norms shape family dynamics and reproductive strategies across different cultures. Let's take a closer look at how social orders shape our ideas about pair bonding. Different societies have their own sets of rules and expectations for long-term relationships, and these standards influence how we make our mating decisions. When someone is married, there are often clear or implicit expectations around money, social roles, and sexual conduct. These expectations come with certain rights, obligations, and even prohibitions, and the community, whether officially or informally, assesses how well partners adhere to these standards. Now, what's fascinating is that our mating brain isn't operating in a vacuum. It's clearly influenced by these marriage standards, and these influences can't be fully separated from our biological processes. In fact, they can shape how we behave and what we consider acceptable or ideal in a relationship. An interesting point to note is that people tend to hide their typical behaviors, often only showing parts of themselves that align with social expectations. This is like a form of camouflage. People modify their actions to appear conformant. The idea here is that these standards are often presented as being naturally part of us, but in reality, they are partly performative, designed to show that we conform without necessarily revealing our true selves. This interplay between social standards and individual behavior is a crucial aspect of understanding how our brains navigate relationships within societal contexts. So, when we look at the cerebrum's most important function in social behavior, it turns out that it's really about two key things. First, it involves clinging to neighborhood rules, meaning we tend to follow the social norms of our community. Second, it also involves rebuffing or punishing those who violate these standards. What's interesting is that, based on neuroscience research, our brains are wired to do both these things. But there's more complexity here. Because of how we secure and sometimes hide these norms, violations can be either reported or simply tolerated. And this is crucial. Even if violations are concealed or not directly punished, simply authorizing or allowing them to happen can lead to real costs for the violators. So, in essence, the brain's mechanisms for enforcing social norms involve a delicate balance between following rules, punishing violators, and sometimes tolerating violations when necessary. All of this ties back to the overall theme of how our brains maintain social order and cooperation. So here we imagine that as friendly inequalities spread across humanity's experiences and social orders, these differences started to become increasingly puzzling. In this context, the societal benefits of standardizing monogamous marriage began to grow. Now, in some social structures like most foraging societies, polygynous unions don't really cause much social disruption. Men in these systems often can't achieve enough prestige to attract multiple wives, and even if they do, it's usually just one or two. Sometimes, the most successful men, those who are extremely prolific, might gain 3 or 4 wives, but that's quite rare. For example, in tropical African forager groups, polygyny rates tend to range between about 3 and 20%. This variation highlights how different social and environmental factors influence marriage practices in these communities. So, what this slide highlights is how our understanding of brain science has helped explain some fascinating social dynamics. Specifically, it shows that through these inner social transformational cycles, the behavior around marriage, particularly polygynous marriage, became more prevalent among the most extravagant and influential men. This makes sense because, as social orders expanded and became more complex, there was often an imbalance. Some individuals gained more power and resources. These men, having more resources, were more likely to engage in polygyny. And this increase in polygynous marriages wasn't random. It had predictable consequences for society. It likely reinforced social hierarchies, influenced resource distribution, and impacted cultural structures in ways that shaped the broader societal evolution. Connecting this to our overall theme, it shows how biological and social factors intertwine to influence cultural development and social structures over time. let's take a moment to explore how higher rates of polygynous marriage can impact a society's overall achievement levels, especially in the most complex social regimes. When a society is highly complex, its success depends on several factors like economic productivity, military strength, technological progress, trade, division of labor, and the quality of future generations. In these contexts, having a high prevalence of polygyny tends to reduce the level of competitive achievement among the population. This is because resources and attention may be diverted away from individual effort toward maintaining multiple households and relationships. Now, controlling monogamy, meaning encouraging or enforcing monogamous marriages, can actually influence important societal concerns. For example, it can affect crime rates, as more equitable resource distribution often correlates with lower crime. It also impacts masculine ideals and motivations, fatherly involvement, fertility rates, and overall economic productivity. So, in essence, the way marriage systems are structured plays a crucial role in shaping societal development and stability. This ties back to our overall theme, understanding how social institutions influence a society's ability to thrive and innovate.